We're doing B, right? Equity and responsibility. Okay. You said you signed up for the other
Yeah,
one.
I did. The local scoring.
Did you see your name on it?
I didn't.
Yeah.
That's why yours too. Huh?
Yeah.
I was like, I'm pretty sure I filled it out.
Yes. Yeah.
No, scoring one.
Was eliminated.
It-
Yeah, that's why I asked about it because I'm like, where's my name? Because when I was looking.
Because they moved it to number two.
To number two, yeah.
Okay, it wasn't
Yeah,
eliminated.
It
yeah.
was moved. Wait, what's that thing? So I'll volunteer for timekeeper. I did that last time and good job.
I'll do facilitator then.
Okay,
You and I can work together.
okay, great.
If someone else needs
Yeah,
to
you
do
were
it.
there last time I was timekeeper.
I think so. I think you ended up doing most of the facilitation.
Yeah, 'cause I was like, now we gotta move on to the next thing. All right, so we are supposed to record. Yeah. You're already ready to go.
Yeah, you're a good recorder.
You happy doing that? It was, I see a frown.
No, that's a
different reason.
It helps me stay focused and make. Yeah,
Well, I know you said you had recommendations that weren't flushed out, right? We're not in the right category.
Oh, it just seemed like we needed another category that some of the recommendations didn't align with the four that we.
All right, so we're supposed to be done at 3:50, which is
Too soon.
Well, do they tell us we
40
started?
minutes. Wow, okay.
Let's do it.
All right, and we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 things to go through. So
I'm just not sure if we're supposed to start yet. Don't they usually tell us to start?
we have a commission person.
Oh,
Do we start?
Start?
Yes,
Okay.
Yes.
I think so.
Yeah,
Did they
okay.
say to start at, I think the chair said,
3:05.
3:05.
oh, yes, that's right.
11. All right, I'm gonna set like maybe, since there's 4 equal blocks, I'll set like 10-minute timers. We'll just check in and see where we're going. Does that sound good to everybody? Okay, cool. All right, our first 10-minute block.
So how do people want to proceed with this piece of it?
That's a good question.
Where the creative was that he wanted.
It's on this separate sheet right here on the back, the second one.
Where we,
The sentence, he had the sentence frame or the like framing of how you wanted to.
It's the second handout. It's like there's two,
And
and I'm reading before area
Suggestion.
one again.
Got it.
I moved your stuff.
No, that's.
Figure it out. We had to move that stuff.
Yeah, we moved it around a little bit. So.
Oh, then I might have to step out.
Are there recommendations that we feel we can consolidate together?
It's just right here. It's
Let's
too big.
I think that's probably.
Yeah, so we want to spend some time reading
Oh, focus area one. Oh, and the first page.
those, or should we just start talking about them?
Do you just want to go one by one, right? You want to go from the lowest to the highest? I kind of saw like the numbers, like I see where they were trying to go, but you know.
Guys, mine, can we letter the recommendations so that we can just like recommend?
So you can do eight, all the way down.
To pay.
Yeah. No, so it's under that. Right here, right there, the one on your hand, the last paper. Try that one. Is it that one?
Oh, is it focus area one? You know.
It's just a consolidated recommendations.
Looks like.
That's it right there.
Oh, thank you. Oh, yeah.
I was looking for say two, not one. Okay.
All right.
So I read through to D right now, and I'm already seeing some similarities between B and D. So I'm not sure, you think we can push those together?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So how should we?
Did any of us write some of these? I wrote D, but because it was about the preparation program rather than the test itself.
Okay,
So yeah, B and D could easily be put together.
okay,
Without a doubt, it might be.
okay. Could someone enlighten me what PADS stands for?
I don't know, is it Performance Assessment Design Standards?
Yeah, it does system. Yeah, they're saying like, yeah, you have, yeah.
Yeah, when they put it out when they first put it out to be done
Okay,
to different organizations,
okay,
those are the design standards they sent to Pearson or Scope or whoever else was putting it together at the time.
Okay.
And
Includes the bias review committee, all those kinds of things.
yeah, the structure of the whole process,
okay, thanks.
which Fresno had to do as well as, everyone else. Otherwise it couldn't have got through. I think that H&I had to do with things that are sort of that are asked of the candidates.
Yeah, I was just thinking that
Yeah.
separating the two between candidates, like, or universities and then individual
Yep.
candidates.
Mhm.
And those are the only two I agree that discuss about candidates that I've seen so far, and the rest is the other one.
Two
So
sets of
we can-
recommendations, right?
Yeah, so we could try to put those together.
Because then that would go to your like B and D combination of systems, like making sure that they're accountable and responsible to the candidates, and then the candidate's responsibility on their end. So I'm just brainstorming, candidate's responsibility. Organization. Responsibility.
And then there's like the passing things.
Mhm.
So my big thing, I'll just throw this out there, I'm not even sure if I see this reflected, is just making sure that the TP provides accommodations or alternative responses for individuals who need them. I read one of the responses or the public comments and about an individual who's a second language learner or English language learner, whatever, I'm sorry, I don't, whatever they call it now. And how it was very hard for them to pass because of the written portion of the assessment and what it requires. And so I just want to make sure that
I think it was there somewhere, didn't there was something
And
about
we-
different modalities to.
and he did say look at focus group too, so let's go ahead and look at maybe the focus, maybe it's addressing focus group tomorrow, right? Yeah, multiple modalities, yeah, that was in there, but I don't remember where that was.
Yeah, it looks like to provide multiple modalities to respond to each
Okay,
prompt.
so that's in
TPA.
focus group too, okay.
Yeah. It doesn't specifically address students who are learning English, but I could be added.
Yeah, and I know in the national board, they do have accommodations for students whose first language is not English. They get just additional time to complete the test, so. But anyway, that's kind of the feedback I had, I just wanted to make sure was put. And that's why it was going for local scoring, because if you're from the community and you know your candidate, then you would know that they have the skills, even though they didn't do the workshop.
It's one of the reasons why why FAST doesn't have that disproportionality that is in the CAL and in a TPA. They don't have that.
Well, and I think it's because it's so
disproportionality in their
like
results.
Fresno-ish, it's like it's smaller. So I think
Yeah.
that's another aspect is we need to look at too, is you don't again, and I know the other group I was looking at was the cost one, like the cost of things. And it's just like, well, it's gonna cost money, but like to what extent? You're educating candidates to work with children, so. Yeah, I know, that's what you know what, I just spoke it here, because that's a whole that I don't.
And then is there anything else that anybody else sees that could be pushed together besides B and D and H and I?
Well, I think more technical, go ahead.
I was saying, I was seeing, maybe they're not the same recommendation, but I do see some themes.
Mhm.
So I saw in J, K, and I think E, this kind of focus on scoring aspect.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's called technical, that's what I was just looking at too, J and K. So J, K, and B said E. is correct?
Hey,
Okay.
Technical aspect, addition codes,
Mhm.
standard deviation. And it can also go toward local school.
Yeah, but like K could be, I think that's kind of we're calling the same, yeah.
I have one, the A and C. I don't know if we wanted to put those together or just a theme of the idea of equity. For the youth out there, or can we include the accommodations as well.
The test privilege, the pedagogical approach, there's phase. So what is test privilege?
Which one?
The first one, A.
A,
I was assuming that it's, the test itself privileges certain approaches. And maybe that is, a lot of things, the candidate's
the
background, the
test-
teacher prep program.
the test referring to the TPA, maybe just clear, I don't know
Yeah.
what the language is.
Yeah, the way I read it is like, yeah, that,
The word privilege maybe is like your trigger word.
Yeah, it's usually
Especially in the equity group, but it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, but just being like, should have a pedagogical approach that is asset based, you know?
Yeah.
Okay,
that's how it's reading.
let's focus on, okay,
Yeah,
maybe taking up.
yeah. Focuses on.
Yeah.
And-
Oh. So that's just,
And
let us know
they
we
don't
have
mean
30
tests
minutes.
either. I mean, they
Yeah.
mean.
30 minutes.
They mean that
I thought it was the fire alarm.
That's what
I've been in this building that long. It's like a tweak.
Yeah, well, I used to have it with my students in my classroom.
they all run out.
They're like, what are we doing? Yeah, okay. Time to move on to the next thing. All right, so we got about 30 more minutes, probably a little less, to be honest, but we're on our next 10-minute chunk.
I mean, it could go, if we look at A, it could go much further than that. Any performance assessment should require pedagogical approaches that are asset-based and community and culturally responsive.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then adding the equity piece at the end of that. Including, it's explicitly addressing equity.
Yes, yeah, and that would go. I mean, it does sort, a TPA does in some sort of language around that. But it's not clear enough.
And A, C, and H and I go together,
So AC.
H and I.
Okay, so we want to put H and I in with A and C as well?
Are we consolidation or just that they're in a similar
I
theme?
wasn't sure it was H and I, was it?
So A and C, I think what we're saying is that we can move C into A, correct?
Right.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I think
And I-
H and I are
Are
on their own.
separate, and I
Yeah.
think going back to what we initially talked about, like the candidate, the individual student versus the system. So the systems approach, right? Like I see the pads as more like how the system will evaluate the data for their students. Versus the candidate's responsibility is that A and C. At least that's how I see it.
What do you mean by candidate's responsibility?
Well, just like what they're responsible for, like the focus on the pedagogical approach, right? That's asset-based and culturally responsive. And again, that could just be the wrong term. That's just me brainstorming. Like separating it just into two different thoughts of like, this is a responsibility of a system or organization. And then this is like the individual responsibility.
The two things end up being the same though, don't they?
Yeah, and that's where it's
If it
hard because.
requires it.
Well,
then-
it's how the language is, right? It's like
Yeah.
how the language is written, like when because I think it from an educator perspective, right? Like I know my special ed language, I know like IEP and the accommodations and then modifications. but then switching it over to where a student might understand, like, do they understand the same acronyms that I understand? If that kind of makes sense.
It does.
But just, how do we put that on paper?
But is that really, yeah, and is that really part of the equity and accountability piece?
Right.
What students are,
Well, I know like from where the early feedback is like, there should be a component where students assess teachers. Like as teachers, I look to my students, like, am I doing a good job? Because you can tell me I'm doing a good job at university, but do my students feel I'm doing a good job? Do my students feel they're learning from me? And that's like another approach I feel like it's often overseen. It's just so focused on, okay, me observe you, you did this right, you did this wrong, you blah, blah, blah. But really looking at a whole, kind of like that, well, not a whole child, but looking at, you know, what does the people you're teaching? And are you really valuing that feedback? Or are you saying, for whatever, like I've taught this way for 20 years, I'm going to continue to teach this way. So I think that ties in sometimes in a way to that whole culturally responsive equity approach. Because I've seen teachers just disregard certain asset-based things that our students have, you know, and again, I come from the realm of special ed. So a student with a severe ADHD in the classroom may be the brightest student in there, but because his behaviors are so sporadic, she may not see that he has that special ability.
So if we are thinking about that, and then we look at A, and say, okay, we're talking about it from the perspective of like, we're thinking about it from the test, and we're thinking about like, okay, we want, like the second half of the sentence is like, we're thinking about the asset-based and the community culturally responsive. And we're thinking about, we want to create tests that have, like support that approach.
Right.
Where do you see that, like, are you, when you're talking about individual, like, you're thinking about like the end result, like the test piece, right?
Well, yeah, I guess. I mean, it's all goes back to the TPA is a test. It's an assessment, right? It's an assessment of teachers' knowledge of, do they know how to teach, right? Going back to national board in general, like, do you know what you're teaching and do you know how to teach it? So students can learn.
is it then that what we're really saying is that the H is the overarching thing because it all stemmed from what the pads were originally, what they said had to be in the actual statements. And if that was the overarching piece, and then A and C go into that.
So I think if you're looking at combining H and I, then now the candidates are analyzing their data. So like student data, right? Like not only what is my student learning from me, but like the other, I always call it like qualitative data, like what test numbers, as you guys know, can only tell you so much, but how do the students feel? Do they feel that you're doing a good job or that you're a good teacher?
Yeah, I think A, C and I could all, A, C, H, A, C and I could all go together. With the same idea that it's must require candidates to.
Right.
That's what we're doing, you know, I mean, it's the requirement that's in there at the minute or not in there at the minute.
Right.
That's missing.
Right, I do like, and I like the idea of moving beyond, suggesting, to requiring or centering or embedding, like using a language that, uses force, especially in light of the data that we saw that was disaggregated by race and ethnicity, because I think if it's not required, it's not gonna happen, right?
No.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we're gonna try to put A, C, H, and I together.
Yeah.
Whoa, okay.
Well, I mean,
Paragraph of
we're
recommendation.
together, but I think conversation is doing a couple different things, like we're kind of noticing the connections between things in terms of groupings. I think we started with like, can we combine some of these things to make less of them, period, and then we sort of morphed into like, oh, what's related to what, right? So we did a little bit of both, but
That was related, so
Yeah.
A and C can be combined, H and I can be combined, and then
And then-
How
And then
they're
we,
related.
yeah, and then we were like, oh, look at how these things are all related, so maybe then we started sort of thinking about it maybe in terms of sort of an outline or like kind of like a flow chart or a.
Yeah, and I see the word context here, and I think that's really just important in general, like, look at the context
Mhm.
of those, like, what are those recommendations for that context, it's meaning gap.
You find the H for the context.
Yeah, well, I just saw the word in general, yeah, I'm just talking about overall in general, not so much of that, I'm talking about H, just that, we're just to kind of bring us back to the big picture plus context, looking at the context of what these recommendations are for. And especially in equity and accountability. But there's just so many different contexts. It's just hard, and being a special educator is so hard to say, okay, let me teach this way, and it's gonna meet everyone's needs, and I think. That's
I
always
really
hard.
wanna see what it looks like to see candidates disaggregate the data, and I really wanna see what it looks like for programs to disaggregate, you know, their data too, you know, that process, like, it's all the way down here at I, you know, but.
And how much license do we have here with wordsmithing if we want to combine these things? Because I don't want to lose whoever put their
I
motion
think, see,
forward
I
and
think
then
A
it-
and C can easily be
Yeah.
combined, it's H and I that I think is gonna be harder to really. It's multi-layered,
Yeah.
I guess, in a way where it might need to.
I would like to see
Be
the
fleshed
language
out.
in pads, you know, also, you know, we're talking about revising pads, I saw some references to pads in another document earlier this morning and was. Right.
Because when they were written, culturally sustaining and culturally responsive wasn't really a term that was used.
Well, and also,
I mean, it was starting to be used
Well,
when
and now
when they
that
wrote
you-
it.
It means different things to different people.
well, yeah, and I was gonna say, I just wrote a chapter for something, and culturally sustaining and culturally responsive is also used right now to do some real like race evasive practices, like in terms of anti-racism, like there's like a culture is used a lot of the time to avoid kind of doing the sort of work that needs to be used, so you'll be like, oh, we need to do, you know, be culturally responsive, but it's like to avoid like some of the work that, you know, like to avoid actually looking at the thing that you're looking at.
Sure, they're not going
20
to allow anti-racist.
No, but not at all. But, you know, but
We might want to put it in there.
no, but I mean, I don't think you need to use that word, but I think
No.
like, you can definitely say like when, like, for example, hi, when you ask folks to do that task, that's the task, right?
Yeah.
You can call it whatever you want to call it, but well, don't call it culturally responsive, please, but but that specific task is the task, right? So
And if we're talking about language, can I remove special needs and say exceptional needs? Is that the place to do it? And I only say that because oftentimes our gifted population, I just read those an articles a friend sent me about our gifted population is often not looked at sometimes. I think that's how-
neurodivergent.
yeah, twice exceptional, like all those terms that are emerging, that it's just, you know, like they're just. Oh, I just need to owe this to an IEP, but what if they're not an IEP? What if you're extremely gifted and yet you don't know how?
Um,
The only two that we haven't been able to put with each other or with anything else is F and G. So do you think?
Well, I have
those-
D too. Did we put
I
D
thought B
somewhere?
and D, I have
Oh,
an
okay.
error.
Oh, you're right, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, B and D.
And then F and G,
TPA related.
I just, with G, it's like the recommendation is a question in the actual TPA about the candidate's preparation received. So is that like
That was based on the thing I brought up when they were trying to make sure everybody was getting the support that they needed. That if you're required to have a certain amount of sessions before you submit a particular task, and if there's somehow where it's embedded within the TPA that requires a candidate to get support from their program before submitting that portion, was a way to kind of make sure the candidates were getting support that they needed.
Okay.
So then that would-
There's sometimes like in my master's program, like we weren't allowed to submit something until it was I sat down and had a conversation with my advisor and board. So
Yeah.
I think it was connected to
So
that.
do you think that would go into like J and K where we're talking about more like the technical the passing rates, the condition code fee.
That one was like more so in the, like the process of doing, some of the tasks within the TPA. Not so much like after.
Okay.
But is that one asking about, in terms of accreditation, that programs have to show that they're doing that? Or is it more about that the students are getting that?
But the students, if there's a task that requires me to seek out and get support from my program before submitting whatever, it's a way of making sure that candidates are getting the support that they
All that they
need.
need.
Because it actually explicitly asks them to get support in order to complete a.
So is that requiring the institution to ask that question, or the teacher or the TPA to ask that?
TPA to ask that question.
To ask that question in the context piece, or because it's not about the assessment is only about the teaching that they're doing rather than the support. I mean, they have to, for Ed TPA, they have to write, a thing about their background and stuff like that. But this would be after they'd finished. They'd have to write something that said how they were supported. And who would that go to?
The recommendation was more focused on during, like, while they're
There.
completing the task within the TPA.
I think it
I don't know
also,
if that's actually
well, I
allowed.
think it also came out because when we were looking at the survey responses, there was a discrepancy in who they were surveying. It wasn't everyone, and it wasn't the students that had not passed the ED TPAs or the TPAs.
Right.
And so I think someone made the suggestion, in order to get data that was more inclusive of students who both passed and did not pass, was to embed a question within the TPA, because they're all taking the TPAs. But when they don't pass, they're kind of outside of the teacher ed program, right? Or something, right? It was like that conversation where like they're no longer being serviced. And so that population was sort of being lost in terms of we didn't understand if they felt supported or not, but they did take the TPA. So maybe embed the question in the TPA. And then we'll capture everyone. I don't know where that data is gonna go, who's gonna look at it, but it was a way for, I think, some of the providers to be held accountable to the students that were taking the TPA.
And I wonder
I don't know, but
if
yeah.
embedded in the demographic, like, name, age,
Oh,
race,
in that.
ethnicity, or was your teacher prep, whatever,
Mm.
candidates preparation, did you feel you had a candidates good preparation, and then what university you went to or what prep program did you go for? I don't know if that's something we can easily just recommend, to just put a quick question in there.
Yeah.
Outside the scope of the organizations that
Yeah.
prep.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that could be pushed to be the integrated education preparation continuum? Does it fit more in that actual section than in the equity and accountability? I know it sounds like an accountability item,
I
right?
think it's different. I
Yeah.
think this can just easily, like I said, just be a survey question. Yes or no? Along with female, male, whatever, all the questions they ask
Oh, like
now.
demographic.
Yeah, just a
Yes.
basic demographic question. And again, I haven't taken the ATPA, so I don't know what questions they ask you typically before. Income level, right? That's all those word questions.
Zero.
Income, educational level, background.
Mm.
And then that leaves us, then so G would be a standalone, but that would be moved into just as a questionnaire piece. And then F would be also a standalone, or could be moved into focus group 2.
Possibly focus group 2, but looking at, does the TPA provide multiple measures to demonstrate a candidate's resume? I see that as, is it just one component or the main component?
Mhm.
Like when you're looking at like that person I read, when they looked at it, did they just use that TPA? He couldn't pass it, that he wasn't ready to be a teacher? Or did they use other measures to say, oh, is a recommendation from the master teacher.
Yeah.
Or even, I know we talked, and I'm not sure like how local scoring would look like. We've talked about it, but is it like a panel that comes together and says, you know what, this is this person's, this is our candidate, this is what he looks like, there's his video, this is his work he submitted. He didn't do so well in the writing, but look at him teach.
Hmm.
Look at the way he looks. Okay, then let's go ahead and pass him. I don't know what that looks like.
Yeah.
Doesn't it go with that I and J as well then? Because that's about passing, isn't it? It's about passing, it's about giving someone or allowing someone a credential.
It would be tied to J, definitely, right? Because that's
Yeah.
the expanding the secondary passing rate. So if they don't pass, it just gets kicked out. Yeah, I would say so.
I didn't understand if F was saying TPA is one of many measures, meaning,
That it's
like
not.
they have to do TPA and this and that to be
There was a
considered
spectrum of things that you would look at, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was reading it and it seemed like, oh, you wanna add multiple.
Well, you use coursework, right? Like how well did they complete their coursework? They receive passing grades. Or some of their final signature assignments, I know is very popular. What would their signature assignments look like? Did they demonstrate their knowledge in that way? But just they couldn't, that TPA just really just,
So not like use it, like you have to have multiple measures, but it's just one measure out of, so say there's like 4 things that they could look at. If I didn't do so well in the TPA, those other 3 could be
it's
considered.
like national
the
board.
same.
You have 4 components in national board. Now, just passing one doesn't mean you get national board certified. You have to meet so many different standards in each of the 4 components as a total.
Or to say you can't rely on one single measure.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking more of like the coursework and then even like, what does the university supervisor say when they're in there doing their student teaching? I mean, are they a rock star teacher, but they just can't get past writing the TPA? Like those would be things that are already
That's why it's,
there.
that's why it's
Yeah.
the same as J,
Yeah.
which is that new thing that, except J takes the new thing further, is that it doesn't matter what you get on your TPA. That's what J is saying. I'm not saying I'm in favour of that. In fact, I'm not in favour of that.
But you're thinking it goes with that, is what you're saying?
Yeah, it goes with that. That it's one of many deciding
Right.
pieces of the work that candidates do as to whether they should be given a preliminary credential or not. It's one of many, and I think it's worth recognising that, but I think everyone already does.
Could we
Right,
try
so we
to
got 10
draft
minutes, 10
one
minutes.
recommendation?
Yeah, I know, we haven't gotten it.
What have you been doing?
I've been telling you all the answers.
What have you been doing? I thought you'd done it all by now.
I think
I put some-
I think we have 2 working ones, right?
Well, A and C for sure, right?
Yeah, for sure, yeah.
We had to start putting them together.
Yeah.
Yes, we recommend A and
It's
C.
a win, let's do 1, so we gotta win.
Maybe
B and
just-
D.
I have
Yeah,
that
B and D,
one
you got
that
that.
requires.
So just outline it that way.
Actually, we did A, C, H, and I together. So don't forget that, A, C, H, and I together.
Little bit more words.
I was kind of noticing that they were.
But I put a line though. Yeah.
I did too, I did.
Oh,
too.
you got a line as well?
We got 3 lines, yeah.
Yeah, we have
So I have it.
Sorry, I don't want to disrupt the
Yeah.
flow. You're having way too much fun.
Yes.
So I'll keep it down. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
We're doing a half-hour extension.
Oh, okay, so I have 8 minutes and 41 seconds left, so I'll add.
Yeah, we will be back in the main room at
You happy with
4:15.
50.
Yeah.
No,
4:15.
4:15, sorry.
4:15.
The only response to that, Colin,
Not
about
going
like
far.
the one of many measures
You've got
is
the
that
flexibility to-
from some voices is that even though it's supposed to be that in theory, it becomes the only measure that prevents a candidate from being able to.
That's the
And so that's the problem, we're like in national board, we know that it's one of many. And so we can kind of pull our strengths in one area over the other. Here, I think it's kind of hard for candidates to inherently do that. Because it might be like, I'm just better in the actual classroom than writing, but I can't demonstrate that because the writing is a big component of the TPA, so. there is something there about that.
And when you're talking, I'm sorry, real quick, just when you're talking about candidates who have or English as a second language or whatever, or you have a dyslexia, or you have a reading disability yourself, it may not be the best way to demonstrate what you know. So go ahead.
Absolutely. That's the bit that why I raised the whole thing about that, the disproportionality, because I can't work, I find it difficult justifying working in a system where that disproportionality is there. And so that brings me on to the bit that you were talking about is, so what needs to be changed within that EdTPA? I mean, the verbiage and the academic language that is it written in those, certainly for EdTPA, is beyond comprehension for most people.
Right.
Now, we virtually read it out to our students who are multilingual, who have IEPs, dyslexia, all those. We're virtually reading on a one-on-one, but other institutions can't do that. I mean, I have like 5 or 6 that I have to work with. Most of you have 20, right? And so that's why that's why I put that in. It really unnerves me that I'm sort of promoting and working for something that I find so racially biased, and skill biased, and previous university bias. I mean, that's why I want the institution, the people who are putting up there to really try and justify what they're doing and how do they change that, because we don't know. I mean, I could guess from my experiences that those students who went to some universities, some type of universities, were less prepared to do that sort of work, but it doesn't affect their teaching.
Right.
They're some of the best teachers we have coming through the program, right? And so it's that whole piece, and that's what I want the people like Pearson or whatever to investigate. So I was really disappointed. Both Pearson person, who I know very well, and from the Cal one, both of them recognised it and said, "Yeah, I'd love to talk about it." Well, it's been there for 4 or 5 years, that discrepancy. And so we're losing some of the best teachers that we should, because of the way it's structured and the wording and all of that sort of stuff.
And even like systemically, even their response to why you didn't pass, it is a drop down menu, like in national board. It's here you go. I mean, if I didn't know what I was doing the first time, I don't know if I'm going to be the second time with this like main comment about why I didn't pass. And that's why I mentioned to them, why don't you do some targeted intervention? If you see that disproportionately your students are not passing based on this one component, that's a component that needs a little bit more focus or restructuring
And that's what I would like to see. I would like to see both of those institutions that are earning money from doing that work actually come back and say, okay, so your multilingual students really do poorly on this and this rubric. And I can go, oh, no, so who's responsible for that? You as the manufacturer of that assignment, that assessment, or me as the support person? But both of us need to know that that's where these students. I mean, it's weird because we're asking our teacher candidates to analyze, right? Who did well and who didn't by groups, but we're not asking us about us. Who did well in your groups?
They use the term financial accountability and focus in the first one. I really like that financial accessibility, because it's like a lot of the times the students who have financial issues are our BIPOC populations. They are the ones that are struggling, who have children at home.
First generation.
Yeah. Trying to raise parents and children and go to school and be a teacher. And it's so hard. I really feel for that population. There's just so many that we know, I think, in teacher world that they just go through. How do you do it? You just do it. You just get it done. I think was it us that we kind of like the cost of the test? Like it's a multi-million endeavor. Like they make lots and lots of money. And I just, that's a whole other conversation.
Really see the economy that has been created off of this one single thing,
Well, and then it's interesting to see who's not passing it first, second attempt, and so it's like who's paying the most from at the least. Yeah, and who's getting that money, right?
And then going back to that privilege piece, right? Like who has that privilege to go to that school who maybe has a smaller. So I've done it all. I've done public school, private school. And it's definitely different. But not everyone can afford a private school.
Well, and financial responsibility on our students, like this, like, you know, multi-million-dollar industry, right? It's making money off of like who's. Right?
We're all moving
So
over.
did that help?
We're gonna walk this.
Stop.
Right.
So back to what we were saying before, I got A and B, no, I'm sorry, A and C and H and I put together. So I don't know if you want to copy and paste those, and then just
And then we can
put
wordsmith
commas
it.
in or something, and then we'll figure it out, like what words we need to take out, you know? So, and then we got some other ones too.
Here. I have ACHI,
Okay,
we said, and then did we say B and D,
B and D, yes.
E and K?
Are
E,
we,
J, K, we were saying.
are we really reducing by doing this, or are we just mushing them together?
I think we're smushing.
We're theming and then
I
we're.
think we're clustering.
It's smushing. I like thinking better than smushing, yeah.
It doesn't need,
Yes.
it doesn't mean that we need to put all four into one recommendation, but it's a thematic cluster. So
Yeah.
That's even better word. I love that.
Okay. Okay.
one might come out, probably not two.
Okay.
Two, three or four might come out.
Okay, and then.
Colin had to say five.
And then H, A, B, and C are so important. Do we want to thematically cluster all that together?
What do we have? We have B and D,
B and D.
right?
And then-
Especially because A, B, and C are the top three.
But again, you can't look at that either because some of these.
That's true.
No, yeah,
True. I'm just asking,
yeah.
just
I think, yeah,
taking a moment, taking a pause.
Yes.
Because you've been all in doing it.
yeah.
Just take a
Yes.
moment.
Are you saying that you think it might diminish it if, I mean, I would like to take.
I'm not saying, I'm just asking, I'm just bringing my head up for air, and just asking, like, you know, like this process, so like, we're just
Do you
like.
think that it diminishes if, for example, we include language that calls that all TPAs do explicitly address equity? If we put that inside that paragraph, that would diminish it?
No, that
No.
would be fine. That would
Oh,
be
right,
fine.
that's what I was
Yeah.
thinking
No,
is.
that's fine, that's
That's
fine.
what I was thinking with what we wrote for A and C.
No, that's okay.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, no, I think.
We have about 20 minutes to go. 20 minutes, so I don't know what we should have. If those thematic clusters are good enough, or if we're supposed to have to, yeah, put the rest.
Great.
Right
We started,
now,
Yeah, we
I don't know. We'll
Got
look
it.
at it, it's just like.
Okay.
in this frame,
Can you tell, reporter, is that what you were called?
Reporter.
Reporter, what do you have in your notes? You have A and C, correct?
I have A and C, H and I, and then ACHI,
We have ACHI. Yes, AC, yes.
Okay, yes.
but like AC and HI are couples.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm a little bit of an idea hoarder, and so this part of the process is really fun for me. I'm like, I can't get rid of anything, so, yeah,
So-
I just wanna like, yeah.
So we need to put ACHI in this frame here.
I do all.
I mean, I don't know, that's what my squiggly lines and everything are telling me, so. But I mean, we could just.
Because I think we
ACHI.
mentioned there being like candidate responsibility versus the.
Recommendation. But that could just be a thought. It doesn't have to be embedded in the recommendations. It can just be, they're separate because they're different because of this reason. That's fine.
I want to respectfully
Disagree.
disagree. Because when I think about equity issues and I think about, say, the individual's responsibility and I think about the candidate responsibility, if we embed it in this recommendation and in this conversation, to me, it suggests that I think in this conversation, what we are, in my thinking, trying to do is to like redistribute and put the responsibility for things that in the past have been put on the individual that need to be put at the more institutional or systemic level. And so to like, I don't want to suggest like that we are putting anything there. I'd rather, you know, when we're thinking about
Just
like.
put it all together.
Yeah, like
Okay.
we're really, our task right now is to think about what is happening at the systemic and the institutional and the policy level. Like, we're trying to be like, this is, you know, this is what we're doing at this level, like just to focus there.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that. What I just don't want is like a,
Say that again.
So what is your recommendation from
Or-
that thought?
So well, I just, yeah,
explaining to me.
I don't know, let's go back to where we were, so what were we talking about? But I just, yeah, so we're talking about A? Or, no,
We were talking about putting
Right now we have-
H and I together,
Yeah,
but
ensuring TPAs require the
Mhm.
culturally responsive, equity focused pedagogy,
yeah,
requiring candidates.
yeah.
Were you saying we don't want to focus on the candidates, but more on the system?
No, it's the TPA, so the TPA requires it,
Mhm.
right? It's the TPA.
well, in hearing you talk too, I kind of think that like, what I don't want either is like, oh, like to blame one person or like just to blame the organization. I guess what I'm looking for is more of a partnership and that it's
Are you talking
It's
about the
collaborative.
TPE or the TPA?
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
TPA,
so the
right?
TPA is not the individual, the TPA is the exam.
Right. The candidate's responsibility, right, is to complete the exam, and the organizations to help guide them complete the exam.
Right,
Right?
right.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
But what happens if the organization is not guiding the candidate in completing the exam and the candidate feels all alone? Because they're supported by the university or the organization.
Mhm.
I guess that's why in my brain, I kind of like separated them out.
I
Like,
see.
as A and C and then separately H
Mhm.
and I, because we're looking at. Again, and they could be blended or thematically clustered, but really looking at,
Where are you talking about the completing the exam in here?
well, to me, like, so H and I think is just, we're looking at, or maybe not so much I, but I was looking at H, right? Just the pads. I guess the pads is really throwing me, and I know you kind of mentioned the pads. Revise the pads to state the TPAs will specifically require candidates to address how they are.
And then I would have like A, like this says, incorporating elements, incorporating and celebrating elements or something, but
Okay, so
we're not that stage now. But I would like to have the A, incorporating elements, have all of that exactly as it is, then put in pedagogical approaches that are asset-based and community responsive,
Right.
and and then add, and directly, explicitly address equity in their teaching and learning, and then finish off with part B, their B. So I would just do the only bit then A, B, C, D.
Those are all required by the TPA.
Yeah, by the TP, yeah, the organization
Yes,
who's
yes.
assessing
Yeah,
has to now promote that
yes.
in their
Yes, they have to-
requirements
Yes,
for
it's
what
required by
students
the,
are to
yeah,
do.
so that, yeah, exactly.
So you're making them into just a bullet.
Subpoints.
okay.
Yeah, taking those,
Colin said on paper.
So you start with H and then you follow it with
yeah,
A.
and then when it says R, and then A, B, and then we go A, they've already got their own A, and then we put in the A from there,
H is the
the
overarching.
C, and then and then the
I,
I.
yes. And then I hear a lot of the word require being put in instead of revise. So do we want to, I mean, it says revise, but you guys are saying require, nobody's saying revise pads. So is it required pads?
Oh, no, they would have to revise pads.
Okay,
And
to require,
require,
okay, all right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the idea is that it's not
Not already-
promote, it's not
Okay.
suggest, it's not like center, it's
that
not.
language wasn't
it's
around when
like-
they,
Revise to require.
Yes,
Yes,
yeah, it's
okay.
that,
I
it's
mean,
like.
it was
it's
2000,
like central.
2004, when did they start to? start doing it. I suppose when they put it out, it must have been 2004, 2000,
I think so,
Six.
yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
So there wasn't that language around.
Mhm.
Yeah, that sort of work, I think.
Well,
I mean,
it
there
was,
probably
but it
was in some
still,
places.
it was still bubbling. And
Yeah.
now, like I said, I think it's sometimes overused.
Yeah.
To fit a certain person's needs. Well, I am being culturally responsive, like, well, what does that mean? Well,
We make tortillas, right, or whatever, yeah, and you're like, well,
we have a whole month dedicated to Black History Month or whatever. I think that was good. We have 11 altogether, so we combine, not combined, but thematically. That's for the board.
And do we have to go back?
4:15, I got about 15 minutes.
Centers, is that the TPA's center culture responsive?
required.
Require teacher candidates to
Yeah.
centre.
Mhm.
Or incorporate.
Embed.
Okay, I have the required teacher candidates. But is that for the purpose of the TPA, like I'm looking at the A here, like the TPA
Mhm.
centering, asset-based, culture
Incorporate.
responsive? By requiring, like they're centering it by requiring.
By requiring it, yeah, you can have it either way around, or they require it to be centred.
The idea is that we just need in the sentence, the language that says that it's not an option. So the idea is that it's not a suggestion.
Got
And
it.
so what that would mean is that when courses are being designed, that we're going to see it. And when students are tuning in their work with students and designing their lessons at the classroom level, we're gonna see it there too.
And there's other opportunities to wordsmith and finalise.
Yes, yeah.
Because, I mean, I think one of the reasons we're trying to do this, or certainly my reason for trying to do it, is that it will make it more equitable for the students
Yeah.
that we have, for students of colour, for first generation students to be able to, they can talk more easily around culturally responsiveness and, you know, this is what my community, you know, I live in my community where I'm teaching in this school and I know the assets that they have. I mean,
Well, then when we're talking about things like.
then they start doing better.
Yeah, and then
The
when we're
work.
talking about disaggregating our data versus based on our populations, it's like, oh yeah, we can do all these things because we're thinking about all these things because we're thinking about them already. It's like all of these things go together, right? And so, we know all these things and.
I think the other point, the other piece is also the assessors. Right.
Yeah.
And I know that's what, yeah, I know, you got mentioned earlier, and I don't wanna bring it up, but I keep thinking about like when we're
I have that on
assessed,
my screen right now.
when we're assessed through national board, it's peers, right? It's other educators in that same discipline, like that's how specific it is. And so the language that I'm using is sort of secondary to the actual communication of my teaching, my why. And I don't know if that's the same for the TPAs. I've never read for the TPAs, but
I have so many questions about it.
I
I
would-
brought up the screen.
yeah, so that's all, I mean, it's an equity and accountability issue where it's like, are we assessing the language that someone is using? Because then for sure, right, all those issues are gonna come up. Or are we able to have folks who are teacher educators or educators themselves who can put themselves in that mindset of a teacher candidate or
Yeah.
credential candidate, right? To be like, oh, I get what they're saying. It might not be pretty, what they're, like how they're writing it, but I understand what they're trying to do.
And it's different
Right.
too with national work because you have 17 different certificate areas. So you're talking about like not just one assessment to meet the whole needs of just
Yeah.
like, oh gosh, all teacher prep or either a single subject or multiple subject. You're looking at exceptional needs, early literacy, mathematics. Gosh, there's so many of them.
Yeah, they break it down. Here, I don't know. I'm not too familiar with the assessors on the TPA.
Yeah, ethnic studies, so I'm like, who's gonna get your ethnic studies candidates TGA and
Yeah.
like, what are they missing because they're not understanding the nuance of what's going on, right?
Local scoring.
Yeah,
Just got the 10-minute warning from
But that's where we kind of figured that out, right?
I get a warning.
So that we- well, I'm talking about them.
Ask you then.
Yeah, he just popped his head.
So I'm looking at this like assessor. Race ethnicity distribution is like population. Anyway, I'm just curious. I'm just curious about. I have so many questions about it.
The whole
Is there-
assessor thing is a big one.
Is there another main priority besides the ACHI? That'd be like this.
Okay.
I like that.
Well, for sure G, like if G is its own separate,
Okay,
G was the one about
That's not throwing that.
asking about the candidate's preparation.
That's a
So
standalone.
That's a separate, like, yeah,
Yeah.
so add that one in
Yeah.
there.
We wanted it to. Is that a-
And then we have the EJK, which is EJK.
Oh, yeah.
okay,
That's the EJK, yeah.
and the BD.
Achi, EJK, and PD.
I did it.
Like you have, like will be your number 2. And BD for EJK.
Okay, I think EJK, just it goes to like looking at the barriers that are already in place, right? Like the one's the condition codes, one's the standard deviation, and the other is just not,
Scoring aspect.
yeah.
Yeah, which is.
Those technical kind of scoring aspects.
You have some pushback for EJK,
Me?
for J.
Yeah, I do, but it's there, so we need to include it at the
Yeah,
moment.
sorry.
I mean,
He's reserving his comment till tomorrow is what he said, so.
It's a larger, like,
Yeah.
yeah.
when Linda Darling-Hammond came up with this, it was to actually make sure that quality teachers,
Yeah, I know.
it's grown beyond what she ever thought. And it's gone down paths that I don't think she ever intended. Not that I know what Linda intends. But it's that's where the problem is, in the sense it's gone beyond all of those things that were supposed to be there. And if we're going to have one, you can't just say, well, some people will do it and some people won't. I mean, everyone will stop doing it basically because it's too complex. So if we don't need it and they've got great reports from their supervisor on placement, if they pass through all their coursework, then we're back to where we were in 1998 before we even did PACT,
Right.
right? And I don't think, well, personally, I don't think that's the right thing to do. I think that we do need something, but it needs to be different to what it is.
I wonder if that's a part, I just thought about the UDL principle, I just did an assignment on UDL principles and making sure that those, and I know it's been mentioned before, I just don't know if this is the right place to mention them. If we're talking about EJK and looking at those. Allowing candidates to demonstrate mastery through other coursework, multiple means to demonstrate candidates' readiness.
So UDL for the teacher candidate.
Well, just in general, just I guess and most, not so much that framework, but just the principles around the universal design for learning. Like, what are we looking at? We're looking at multiple modalities or representation.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense because we are teaching our students
Yeah,
that they need to embrace UDL, but then we're
I
not,
like that.
yeah, but then we're not actually offering it. that way.
But how they do that,
Yeah.
but that's what we don't
and I
do.
don't want it to be confusing either.
No, but you're absolutely right, because it's not what they're doing, but how they do it that is different than with UDL.
Yes.
It's we're not lowering a standard,
Right.
right? We're finding you different ways that
Yes.
more
To
people
demonstrate your
can actually achieve it, and we're finding all of the avenues to be able to do that. You
So
know,
incorporate UDL principle, I don't know how it, again, it doesn't have to come here, but I was just hearing our discussion, that's kind of reminded me like, hey, we need to make sure that.
So then that would be a new
It could be.
recommendation to put into this. Yeah.
It could be, or I could think, I can just easily see it being mentioned in like the language, so.
and I think there needs to be, I mean, you kept raising, I think there needs to be another statement
assessor.
around assessor.
Yeah, which I didn't want to bring up because I think a whole other,
Well, we can.
that could be its
definitely
own
add it.
standalone.
But it's nowhere else, is it?
Yeah, it isn't, so
Yeah,
it's here.
It's like,
But I mean, we can add something whenever we want,
I'd like to make that stronger too.
Yeah.
maybe we should be putting that in our notes that there,
Let's put it in, please.
Even if we haven't got
I
the
was
wording
thinking-
of it.
This morning before I came, I spent about, I don't know, almost an hour thinking about the assessors, so.
Yeah.
It's been on my mind too.
Yeah, and particularly, I mean, your example around ethnic studies is absolutely spot on.
Right,
How many of the assessors
right,
have taught ethnic studies,
right,
which is a whole different way of teaching?
right.
You know, I mean, ethnic studies for us now is pervasive through all of our history and social studies uh, preparation. So even if you're teaching AP history, you're going to learn about how to do that through a lens of ethnic studies. And I don't know how many assessors actually know what it is.
Oh, and you're saying to add something about assessors?
Yeah, we don't want to discuss assessors.
I wanna keep them.
It's a separate.
That we need to have some recommendation that will be coming at some point, you know.
Yeah,
Specifically about the assessors.
Well, we haven't, they're not really, they don't live anywhere. A recommendation for assessors doesn't seem to live anywhere at the moment, you know, and so it probably needs to live in equity and accountability.
Because it's the assessors that are in the end
Yeah,
following, hopefully, I mean, they're following the lines that they've been given. And that is resulting in the disproportionality that
yeah.
we're trying to get rid of. So let's have a look at, well, what are they doing? Are they really not biased by poor use of English language? Maybe they need some more training
And now
around.
I think about AI tools.
Well, yeah.
Let's say a university can't use AI tools to do something with it and not really use people like, oh, I'll just,
but that's, yeah, and that's one of the fears of the AI, is that it could just be an AI assessing it, and then you have a whole, I think, other mess, because it's not gonna pick up.
Oh, it sure doesn't.
No.
I tried to use it to do some editing and reviewing for the chapter on anti-racism a couple weeks ago, and you know what it did? It swapped out mindlessly, because it doesn't have a mind, but with anytime I wanted to use the word equity or equal, it used equity and equality, like.
Oh, they did the
didn't
same?
care. It didn't care. It didn't care. So I looked at it and I was like,
There is.
this won't work. Yeah. And so I was like, oh,
That's not
you
good.
can't touch it again. And so, yeah, because it doesn't, like, it means nothing, you know, to.
but if you're an overwhelmed assessor and you've got to
Right.
get it done, there's a deadline. And actually in my notes I have in here, and again, this could be for another time. It's just like, a rolling submission for TP. It sounds like national board, it's all due at the same time in May, and then we find our results, and actually this Saturday, some of our candidates find their results out, so it takes months to kind of grade. But I hear like TPA, that's pretty, like, the turnaround's supposed to be really quick, or is it?
It is.
It is, yeah. So
It
what's that quality of evaluation if you're supposed to get it out in 4
So a
weeks?
TPA is 3 weeks. From the day you submit to the day you get the result. But I mean, you get the result, that's it.
Yeah, no feedback, no nothing.
Really.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was just my thoughts around assessing as well.
Yeah, and the session before last, I did something around and asking about the anti-bias training for the assessors, and got a little bit of information from a couple people, but not very much. So, and it didn't sound,
Well, it's probably a statement. Just don't be anti-bias. Next.
there was a training, you know, and then they do calibration and like recalibration, but then I was like, who does the training, what's the training for, then the documents that I got like. You know, so I don't know, I didn't.
Even their calibration, so like when we do calibration for a different reading, we have a discussion. So we're like live, you know, online, virtually, but we're live because there is conversation even about, I don't understand why this is a 3 and this is a 2. So does that happen? Like, is there a conversation? Is there a discussion? Is there a?
I don't know. I mean, that was one of the best things about local scoring with PACT, was when we were doing the actual training of it, with people talking about, well, why on earth would you give that a?
We do that for AP exam for students,
Mhm.
but we're not doing that for credential candidates.
Yeah, I think the only, I'm not sure it's a conversation for Ed TPA. I don't know about our TPA, but
I'm gonna ask, I know someone.
it's certainly a senior person, anyone who's close to the border, anybody within 3 or 4, the senior scorer will have a look at that. I don't know if they have a conversation around it or the extent of that conversation. But it only comes up if it's around a border.
Right, we have Don't have any time.
That's it.
Well, good
Maybe
group.
just email Adam.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. That was really.
Did everyone felt they were heard?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I missed the roll.
I talk way too much again.
I think I did too.
Okay, so you were going to tell me not to talk too much. I relied on this.
I respect the facilitator.
Yes, you were the facilitator.
That wasn't
Yeah, sorry, Ted.
the facilitator. Sorry, have someone else next time. I just wanted to make sure.
No, you weren't. I'm fine.
I wanted to make sure I wasn't the note taker. And you beat me to being he always does that. He always goes, I'll be timekeeper.
Yeah, I'm talking.
Timely.
Yeah.
I think if I'm in a group with you tomorrow, I'm going to say that you volunteered and you're fed up not being the note taker.
Oh, no, no.
We just make it a little bit bigger. My eyes are not as young as they used to be.
You did a great job yesterday. Jeff.
Yeah, it looks like it.
Yeah, when I read through them when they came through.
Sense out of what we were saying.
Yeah.
It's the second and third part I need help with I'm just
Like the
trying to.
rationale.
The rationale and everything. And then zoom.
At the bottom right, you can probably zoom in. Just like plus. Oh, that looks good right there.
One at a time. So, I mean, just to kind of break down, and if you have something different, just let me know. The recommendation letters. We divided them from A through K. So use that as your reference. The first theme, we're talking about equity and culturally responsive pedagogy, it's A, C, H, and I. Achi. And then we're talking about the equity and disproportionality was B and D. And the assessor practices and scoring was E and K. Candidate support was standalone, G. Candidate readiness was F and J. We don't have any public folks to explain the letters.
I think if they go online though, they can see this.
Yeah.
But we added the letters, didn't we? They
Oh,
won't know.
true.
They won't know. No one will know the letters
Yeah.
that we.
Well, so looking at the focus area one recommendation, if they letter them A through K, top
Yeah.
to bottom,
Mhm.
then that's what we were referencing.
Yeah, we should probably put a note somewhere as well for
That's a good idea.
Adam
Mhm.
when he looks at it, because he might go, what? Where did they get these? Where did they get these letters from?
Achi, it's Achi.
For the first one, because it was a lot, it was just kind of the recommendations put into the subcategories. But I didn't put in the rationale and the action of theory pieces from the template.
Checking about one thing about the first one. Okay, in the second and the fourth bullet point. There's like a little bit of overlap in the Venn diagram of things, and then I think there's a missed opportunity to be a little more clear about something. So in design and deliver equitable learning opportunities that address the unique needs of et cetera, et cetera. That seems to be referring to like the systemic and institutional barriers and sort of the context, right? With the word learning like opportunities that address like the needs, right? And then in the fourth bullet point, it's like there's this overlap and then it's like demonstrate asset-based pedagogical approaches, right? So it's almost saying the same thing twice, but it could and maybe should say something different by in the second bullet point saying something like just wordsmithing it a bit by talking about like addressing barriers, you know, like do you know what I mean? Like changing the language to be a little bit more explicit in terms of like basically that like achievement gap versus opportunity gap versus like not putting the responsibility on the individual for something that's systemic or institutional, like that kind of like nuance in the second bullet point, which I think it's sort of trying to do but doesn't quite do. Instead, it sort of repeats what's happening. Sort of do you see what I'm saying, or am I just being too fussy?
I see what you're saying. I do.
Is it clearer, or am I wanting it to say
So
something
are
that
you
doesn't
wanting to
say?
add more to bullet two or change bullet 4 to reflect what you're sharing?
I think bullet 4 is fine. It's bullet 2 that could have a tiny tweak.
Okay,
So
let's see how.
because designing and delivering equitable learning opportunities, how is that? What? Design and deliverable equitable learning opportunities. That to me refers to the environment, the context, and sort of like addressing barriers.
Systemic barrier.
But that's not what the words really say exactly. This is me.
And deliver equitable learning opportunities.
For the teacher, these are requirements for the teacher
I
to
understand.
address.
Well, so going back to like the context, right? It would
It's
be.
about framing. Like
Yeah.
the second bullet point is about framing, right?
Yeah, about the whole thing,
Yeah.
and the fourth one,
Is about.
which we should probably move up to be underneath that one.
Yep.
But
Uh-huh.
then it would lead into that.
Exactly,
So-
exactly.
So the first one is like the big picture.
Yes, exactly. But I'm not sure it communicates that. Well, maybe if they're right next to each other, it will more clearly communicate that one is about the framing and the second is about the, like, the action.
Design and deliver equitable learning opportunities that address the unique needs of diverse student populations, including, would you see something like systemic barriers in there or like as a list or?
Yeah, I think maybe the word unique needs is a problem. Maybe that
Okay.
phrase is not clear enough, like, or explicit enough.
So that address the,
Like unique needs just seems a little bit evasive or vague.
especially I think there are different terms for unique. So, but it's not necessarily like finding another word, it's finding the right word, correct?
Mhm.
To address the,
The goal is to
systemic or
address
institutional
systemic-
barriers is what it is.
systemic and institutional barriers.
Something more like that. I don't know. But that's, to me, seems a little more
Core
clear.
diverse student populations.
It doesn't even need unique.
It doesn't need unique needs.
Diverse.
Because unique needs could suggest that there's something inherently that needs to be like fixed within an individual student versus like the situation is a problem. You mean?
Well, and I think that's important for teachers to call out, like
Right.
in their teaching, like I work in an underserved student, area. My parents are the poverty level in my
It's
area.
better now.
I feel better about that.
And you said did you guys move it already?
For the preposition, you're fine with those.
Yeah.
I was listening to you guys, it sounds like maybe facing is like the word of, seems like it's like really hard and then like this big language and then it's like of. I don't know, I feel like, yeah, like facing.
Yes, exactly. CCC,
Yes.
yes. Yeah. Yeah. These little tweaks make a big difference.
I couldn't remember exactly what you're saying. Did you say expanded ability? Is that what you said?
Exceptional needs.
Exceptional. Okay.
Yeah.
Exceptional
needs.
Yeah, or yeah, it's exceptional abilities, needs,
Yeah,
abilities.
it's fine like that with different,
Yeah,
exceptional and different.
because I think you were referring with the exceptional abilities to also include like the gate community,
Yeah,
yes.
right, just
yeah.
all students with different gifts and
Yeah.
talents. A gate is gifted and talented, right? So exceptional. And I know now disabilities is being spelled the low D, so that's like trending right now. And a capital A. So,
This is a side question. For students identified as gate, are they supposed to also have IEPs?
no, that's been talked about though in some of the gifted realms is like, how can we create learning plans for our gifted populations? Instead of just giving them a packet. So that's what often happens to that student. All of my children are identified as gate, so I've gone through a lot of my own parent experiences on how students who are gifted are accelerated in the classroom.
And also how they're left, then when they get to high school, they're magically left alone. Because that was my
Yes.
son's thing too. It's like he's gate through his whole life and then until ninth grade, and then it's like,
You don't have it
no,
anymore.
you don't, you just are assuming that you're taking every AP class that's available. Is then
And
what
there's
becomes
the
gate.
emotional
Gate.
piece that
Yeah.
people don't often think about, because when you're gifted, you have high intellect, but you're still developmentally at that developmental level. So emotionally, there's just a difference in how you work with students. That I guess that people don't,
We like the order of this.
Can we, while we're on this one, can we just add the word assets to the third bullet point where it says then community assets / knowledge?
Yeah.
Cool.
Slash.
Yeah,
Yep.
I think that's fine.
and instead of different needs, can we put ability level? And disaggregate on the fourth bullet point. Right?
Yeah, okay.
Instead of different needs of different ability levels.
I don't like that.
That's not what it's referring to.
Oh, what is it referring to? Let's see. Well, I'm assuming it was race, ethnicity, language, and then different needs. So what is different needs referring to? Is it not disability or
The
exceptional?
original was special needs.
Oh, it was? Okay.
Race, ethnicity, multilingual, special needs.
So now is it just trying to be vague? Is that what's happening?
I think it was just changed by accident.
I changed it because I always end up putting differently abled instead of.
So can we put in maybe exceptional needs then to keep the same language consistent with the above?
Is that what's being used in education right now? Because in
Not just for-
child adolescent development, we're not using that language.
Differently abled.
No, we're using disability and, we're like,
No one does anymore, I don't think.
so.
I think it's all exceptional.
It's exceptional needs.
Because everybody is exceptional, then because
If
they're
we're
not.
using medical and psychological.
That's where it
language.
goes exactly, the medical model of disability, the social model of disability. Exceptional was used, I prefer in referring to students who are on IEPs because I don't want them to be labeled in general. Even though the IEP is a label, right? Because if you have a IEP or you're a special ed student, so you don't need this, or you're a special ed student, so you can't do this.
Mhm,
Because you have that and you don't qualify, you're not a general ed student.
mhm.
So the real push in our school district is general ed students first, and then looking at the IEP to see what accommodation to be put in place. So like my national board certificate areas is exceptional needs, and it includes deaf and hard of hearing, visual impairment, gifted is in our exceptional needs category, not severe and mild moderate.
Mhm.
So students with all those different ability levels.
Yeah, we use exceptional in the same way. Exceptional
Okay.
covers. I mean, at Stanford.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what that.
So the language is changing, so and that kind of goes to like, even like we shared earlier, like culturally and sustaining pedagogies, like so many years ago, what did that look like compared to what it is now?
Yeah.
Right.
Their current, we're like a couple of years back.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, you know, a good example is that in the Ed TPA, and I imagine the Cal TPA, there's nothing really about UDL. It's all about individual. That's all you're requiring the students, the teacher candidates to do is to make individual adjustments to their teaching,
And so
not
we
thinking
use
about the whole
neurodiversity. We don't use
UDL.
neurodiversity in
So
education.
that's trending for autism now. We were just told in a recent workshop that students with autism are now considered neurodiverse.
And we would use neurodiverse, we use neurodiverse beyond autism though, for
Yeah.
like intellectual differences of all types.
So you
Okay.
just-
It's good to know, yeah.
Should we include the piece, the recommendation is necessary because implementation is the action theory? It's, template.
Yeah, because it's diversity, it's like neuro.
This one was long, so I left it out.
Yeah.
But keep the same template. Do we add in this recommendation is necessary because, and then the rationale? Implementation, this recommendation is intended to address this by action with intended outcome. This template.
Mhm.
So is the description of the action the first thing, and then the bullet points fit into these things? Do you know what I mean? Like, is that overarching one actually this, and then what we bulleted here, fall into here? You would love for that to be, so, I mean, because it looks like we're going through a list of what we're, you know,
No, I think the
rationale.
rationale is why that,
is all.
not that, that's
not
the
that? Okay.
description of what
Okay.
needs to be done. I don't think so.
Okay.
All right, let's do the hard labor.
Yeah, we gotta do that.
Well, the rationale is, I mean, for each of them is to address the inequity that we're seeing
Yep.
in teacher performance assessment.
Yep.
And that's the same for each one,
Yeah.
to address that. And then the action is that we want the providers of the teacher performance assessments to change what they're doing, to include these. That's the action point, isn't it? It's not like, you know, and the same with the next one, which is about them investigating. We don't want them just to investigate.
Yeah.
We want them to make changes in what they're requiring of the students based on what they found when they investigate the disproportionality.
100%.
So I think it's like virtually the same thing for each one, Jason. It's like, you know, yeah, to address the inequities that we know exist within this current system is the reason for it.
Yeah, the language I would like for the rationale, the implementation is what was. Cause we had a whole conversation about the explicit need.
Mhm.
So it
Yeah.
wasn't the sort of vagueness or the alluding to it, it needs to be explicit, and so.
Yeah.
Maybe in the implementation of these recommendations intended to address.
Yeah, the explicit, and I mean, it was very clear, you know, and data led, you know, the need for this change.
I think that's a good thing to reference as well.
Yeah, it's based on data. It's not just a
Yeah.
group of equity people sitting around saying, you know, we could do better for our young, you know, people of color and our
No,
students.
it's like, yeah, you're looking at this, it's so clear.
Data, what are we referencing?
Passage rates, so.
The data provided by the by Ed TPA and Cal TPA themselves. I mean, it's their data that we're talking about.
Specifically, or like just assessing agencies, like provided by, because then you're not including FAST in there.
FAFSA didn't have the problem because it's locally, because it's a locally scored and run.
I just hesitate to name two things in something like this because then it only focuses on two assessments. So if FAST does show some discrepancy, or if something else comes along, then they're like, oh, but you didn't put that in your thing. You just said Cal TPA and NTPA. You didn't say assessing programs or,
Right.
yeah, and the modes of assessment or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
hold on, how is the the TPA data saying, because this is about what the teacher has to do, but the TPA data was just like their pass rates were disproportionate.
Well,
But we think that, I think that what we're asking them to do there, like pedagogical approaches that build on student strengths, community, all of those, we're asking them to put those in because they will help assist the students who are being in that large group of this underperforming in the test. Sorry, I'm not thinking very clearly this morning. It will come, I'll warm up.
With the wording.
Yeah.
I'm finding it hard to type, to think.
So the connection is that like this changes the framing of the practices in general, right? So this is what's happening at the student level, and then this is what we want happening at the assess, like the TPA and credential candidate level as well, right? So this is like nested dolls. We're wanting this happening at all these levels, right? So.
Yeah, I just didn't,
In the moment looking, I know, so it doesn't connect in this exact way in this moment, right? So let's make it connect more clearly. So,
TPA data isn't what's
no, not in this, no.
showing the,
No. So the district credit is it's one piece, right? So, but it's not a direct line like that sentence suggests.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's better.
this, yeah, yes, exactly. Yeah, it's more like part of, it's one piece of like a comprehensive approach to addressing that data, you know, but. Okay.
We could think about in some way adding it, because then we're alluding to the assessors, which we haven't explicitly talked about,
Yeah.
right? But that's where the assessors will come in, where they're
Yeah.
looking at a candidate's work. And it might not fit the stereotypical TPA, because they're teaching in a, you know, ethnic studies or a different type of classroom. But they're able to understand that, you know, the issue of equity is important when they're looking at a specific candidate's work in a specific content.
Yep.
That matters, but I, you know, that might be doing too much, and the whole question of the assessors comes up again, but.
I think we should add something, like if we've got the time, to add something to one, there is one where we do talk about the assessor, don't we?
Yeah, I think that was.
we're gonna build that one, right?
Okay.
Yeah,
But I think you're right, that we should add something along those lines. That sort of about the holistic nature of teaching, rather than, at the minute, it's like 15 little boxes that you tick.
Oh, yeah.
But it misses out that, hang on, I might not be able to score all of these little boxes, but overall, holistically, I know this person should be getting a credential in teaching. And so they've lost that holistic piece.
I like this part was our action, and not so much the rationale. But I'm just repeating myself. We can leave it for now and then just come back to it.
yeah.
We don't have to go in order. Seem like the assessor's piece was fresh on our mind.
Yes.
Good enough.
Lost it.
It's, right there. Here it is.
That-
That's the recommendation.
Very specific.
Yeah.
It could be nested under something larger. But that's not, I don't think that's our place to do that, but.
Most of these are pretty much saying this, but just kind of consolidated. We haven't change too much of the spirit of the
Right.
recommendations.
This seems like it should be a sub recommendation under something larger having to do with assessors, you know, like versus the larger recommendation to me, you know, because that we're looking to add something down below and it could easily be something above E and K. I don't know. I don't remind myself what E and K are, where they were very like technical little pieces, right?
Yeah, K was condition codes.
Yeah, recalibrate,
maybe-
retrain assessors, and acknowledge that of problematic errors. A, remove all condition codes, provide a score of 0 for blank answers on that section of rubric, but score what is possible from the submission.
Okay, well, there could be a couple different things. We could tease these apart and then couple E with a recommendation that has to do with something with assessors, like the assessor recommend that does not yet exist exactly. And then K could be something technical that has to do with the exam itself. Or we could keep this and kind of remove the assessor practice, kind of make it less about the assessor and more about the test, or just leave it as is and added something more specific about assessor training or assessor.
Well, I think we have J here too. I'm just seeing this, assessor practices and scoring. So J refers to all, I didn't read the last part,
Yeah,
allow
right.
candidates and programs to demonstrate mastery through other coursework. And I know we've also talked about portfolio, so I don't know if all this goes in this section right here.
Maybe it's K and J, and then we take out E and then make that part of a larger assessor recommendation. Yeah. So. Yeah, that would work. So there's one that's more about, the codes and the scoring, and one that's more about a
The
larger
assessors.
recommendation for the assessors.
There's that other thought, I didn't capture all of the examples you guys gave, but we wanted to include something about the assessor's knowledge of what they are assessing.
Right, so we could take E and have that put with the group note,
Mhm.
E plus the group note, and then we could take,
J and
J and K, put them together. So it would be an assessor recommendation, E plus the group note, and then J and K would be more of a scoring kind of a recommendation. I think.
Discussion on that. Where's Jay currently?
I don't think J's anywhere. I
Yeah,
think.
J's just, disappeared.
Oh, wait, hold on. J is right there. Look,
Oh.
on E with F. What
Oh,
F?
candidate readiness, oh boy,
Oh,
okay.
CPA
Oh,
is
messing
used.
it up. Okay.
It was, and they don't have to be, and I don't even know if I heard that correctly, but have F and J because F was talking about multiple measures for candidate readiness. J was passing rate candidate.
Perfect, let's lump it in there, let's add it in, boop, just jump, yeah, that can be,
The code one, yeah.
yeah. Well, add one more.
Which
J
one?
and
Yeah,
K?
so good.
Add K.
K can go in there too.
F and J.
J, F, K.
Hey.
Please help me remember. Chi, I'll never forget Achi.
Yeah, never forget.
Okay, that works. Yes, because it's expanding the secondary pass rate, and that is candidate readiness. See? JFK,
Candidate
maybe?
readiness, pass rate. K is all condition codes.
When they were getting an error on the condition codes, then it would like void the rest of their assessment, and so they were saying that that was unfair or inequitable, and so that they should still review the rest of their submission and not just be voided because of one error code. I think it does fit, right? Or
Yeah, I think so.
can, or it should.
We wanted to sort of say that, and if a scorer thinks that they can score it without that, and that, you know, that this is a passing candidate, then that shouldn't impinge their final result. It's, you know,
Yeah, that's equitable because we do that for other scoring assessments. We're asked to score regardless of it's in the right place or
yeah.
regardless of that, but it seems like a TPA is a little bit more strict.
That was the other bit,
Like a word.
where it says prioritize evaluating candidates' knowledge over penalizing. It sends a message to me that what we're really asking for is something that we would always say to our teachers is look at what they can do.
Yeah.
Have a positive lens through the whole process on what they can do rather than fight. Really, I get the sense that a lot of them are looking for what they haven't done.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, so that's part of that retraining or you know, for assessment is, okay, this is all positive. We need to look at what our students are able to do, not what they've missed. Don't allow that to cloud, oh, they didn't, you know, there's only 2 students that they've really done. The other one wasn't very good. So, you know, they only get a 2 on that.
I agree, and I don't even think it's a feeling. I think just with the amount of condition codes that were presented to us, it's clear that they're looking for ways to throw them out and see what they can do over what all the other work.
What they can't do, what isn't here,
exactly.
what can't they do, what isn't here, you know, rather than the other way around. What can they do?
Why would you need so many ways to knock out, to invalidate their entire, you know,
1,000 ways to say no.
process, right? You know, that's not what you were looking for, right?
Yeah. It's a bit like when I used to score national exams in England and stuff like that for history. We were always told, give them the benefit of the doubt. If you were reading their essay and you think that, it's messy, it's like, but they sort of got it, then they've got it. Right? You know, that's the balance. It isn't that they haven't got it, right? It's that, I sort of see what they're saying. Yeah.
And it goes to that writing piece, right? That writing piece, it's hard for some of our teacher candidates.
Yeah, that's the hardest bit for significant numbers of them in the writing. It's got nothing to do with their teaching.
And in national board, we often say like, the writing's very different. People like, is it like a master's degree? It's like, no, national board writing is just different. It's just, you are analyzing, you're describing, you're analyzing. There's certain things that you're doing to show you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be pretty.
No, it can be, but it has to follow a sequence, but it doesn't have to be like grammar. And as long as, like you said, you're getting the point, I can kind of get what you're saying by what the evidence is showing, by what you wrote, by the other things that I've seen. So.
And I feel sure that they're not doing that. I feel sure that the scorers are not doing that. They're penalizing. And no, okay, they didn't really do that. No.
Yes, that's just.
But we don't want K. This is where K is related to the assessor. Scoring practices, so they focus on what can be and not. So if you get the condition code, they just don't look at it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, they do. They're allowed one condition. I can't remember what it is for a TPA. Because they could still pass. If you've got like high enough, so if you've got a high enough score and a 0 in one thing with a condition code, then you can still pass, even though you've got a condition code in that one thing, right? But you can't have a condition code in 2 things, which very often, if something is missing, like a piece of student work, then there'll be at least 2 parts of the rubric that they can't score. And so therefore you can't do it. They're allowed 1, as long as they still get to 41 as the total.
Yeah.
So you want it kind of that to be an overarching.
I think we're talking about putting assessors all separate altogether, right? And then scoring. Was this assessment all on its own? E was all on its own, and then we put the others together, F, J, K, right?
I see what, Jason's saying though, is that second part is still in there. So the revising scoring practice, doesn't that come from K?
So that, yeah,
Yeah.
so
that
that's
is
what
true.
I was, this is what I was hearing, have there be a larger assessor recommendation. And I just kept everything the same. Something about revising, retraining the assessors or practice. To prioritize what they can do, to revise scoring so that they score what can be assessed, not dismissing it because of condition codes. And then third, that assessor's knowledge, something about they need to have knowledge of what they are assessing. That's what I heard.
So when they do the TPA, is it just one assessor or does it go through? I thought it was two iterations. Okay.
One assessor unless it's close,
And
and then it goes to a senior assessor who will double score it. And if there's an issue, the senior assessor can then go to the head of that subject area and get their advice on one. But only if it's within like 2 or 3, which doesn't account for the condition codes, because then sometimes they're missing by 5 points. Well, then they wouldn't. It wouldn't be passed to anybody else at that point because they're 5 points away. So just one person would do it. I've got no idea how many people that is across the country that are doing. I don't know how many they score.
Scoring training?
Yeah, I do AP and we do an asset base where like we are trying to give the students the point.
Yeah, the benefit
No
of the
matter where it is, how it looks like, and so they'll throw it back at us and say, reread it or and then it's national board. I did that last year.
Yeah, I haven't done the training. We could sign up for like national board to be the assessors for national board test, but I haven't had the opportunity to do that yet. So I was just wondering if she had.
Yeah. And it's all the asset base, so we're trying to. It seems like this is an asset base.
Yeah. Did that answer some of the questions now?
Oh, I just need you guys to confirm if we are keeping this as part of the,
Leaving K in with
Oh, okay.
part of K. Stop.
part of K,
Okay.
A1.
Okay. 5 minutes.
I feel good, I mean,
Yeah.
it's gotten worse.
Don't give us any, stop us now.
I know, exactly. I know, when we came in here, we're like, oh, we got it, and now we're like, oh.
I say just leave the assessor one, if another group figures out a better way to, hold them accountable, great, but at least we have it in here
Yeah, that's fair.
as a blurb for now.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a smart.
and it does sound like we're getting, I don't know if we're gonna get another crack at it quite as like this, but they are gonna present these again and then, and again, and then, we'll look through them, and if we have any comments at that point, I'm sure we can email Adam at that point saying, well,
Yeah.
we decided I feel it should be like this or whatever, yeah.
Yeah.
The more we read these and look at them, the more I want to add and
Yeah,
to do other things.
Well, if you guys can help, there's one that I wanted to address because I felt like it was putting it on the candidate, or at least and not so much the EPA, and I can't remember where I put it. This one's on the verse. So in the rationale I wrote, it shows that candidates from underrepresented groups face systemic barriers that contribute to lower success rates. So it makes it seem like it's just these barriers as to why there's this disproportionality, but doesn't put it onto the TPA designers themselves.
Right, that's
I
what I'm
don't want
talking
to.
about, yeah.
I wanted to be explicit, like, no, there's something about this test
Yeah.
that's
Uh-huh.
resulting in a disproportionality.
Yeah.
So where it says implementation of this recommendation is intended to address. It's intended that the providers of the assessment actually change the assessment.
Yes.
Yes.
Actually change the assessment based on their investigations and the disproportionate, to address otherwise they could just say, oh, yeah, we found it. These are the reasons for it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Out there.
Yeah, so there you go. You
Gotta
asked us
fix
to
the
tell it.
system
Yeah.
and then-
But that's the implementation is that they need to, the assessment people need to change.
Just put in the
Okay.
beginning right there.
Yeah, so just like-
REI TPA workbook recommends. Put it right there. TPA assessments be changed and hold preparation programs accountable.
You see, it doesn't ever mention about them making any change.
Yeah,
The
So,
RDA
like-
recommends.
like a redesign, something like that.
Yeah.
Design,
Yeah.
And redesign to meet.
Very
Yes.
first sentence, fourth word. Right up there, before holding. Right there,
Uh-huh.
we recommend.
A redesign, is that what I heard?
Yes.
You know.
Redesign. Assessment agencies or creators or whatever, redesign.
There's a program accountability piece,
There are two
but
things.
not the TPA.
Both.
TPA providers research, publish findings. And support.
Programs in reducing this, and then there needs to
Not
be,
the redesign.
and then the TPA providers need to redesign. According to their finding, to address the findings.
At the end.
Can't that be at the bottom, the intent?
It could be at the implementation, it could be either place, I think, I don't even matter.
Want them to look at the inequities to be able to then redesign.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exact on that.
The assessment itself needs to be,
Yeah, it might be better at the end,
Yeah.
yeah, under the implementation, yeah, so it might be better right down the bottom,
Yes, to be like the intent.
Sorry.
yeah.
I see the recommendation as being the top
Yeah.
part.
Yeah.
Yeah, do both. That way.
Yeah.
we can't
Yeah,
get
do
lost.
both.
In the recommendation.
Yeah, do
we don't want
both.
to get
Yeah,
lost
you're
in
right.
in all of it.
Yeah, just keep
Put
putting
it all
it
up in there.
in every line.
Else.
Every line.
To amend, develop,
Redesign.
Redesign. I like
redesign, I like that.
Because sounds like it does need to be redesigned, because it's not for current teachers, especially after COVID and all the learning that we've had. Learning looks different now. I see so much more technology, not as much assistive technology, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Redesign what, the assessment?
Yes. Yeah, perfect.
And then I did want to make sure that the UDL principles were acknowledged. I think in the last one, it was candidate support. Is that the one, that last one we looked at?
Let me just make a note here.
We'll buy overtime right now.
You wanna know?
Exactly. I know.
I always do, just
Yeah,
You could even be,
while they're asking.
yeah.
you could even
It's
be more
coming in.
explicit in this recommendation sentence by saying like, this recommendation is necessary because. Of emerging evidence from like TPA, whatever, like in addition to just systemic barriers, like the vague contribution, like you could just be more, if you wanted to make a messy sentence, you could just add that like there's like emerging data, about that's like their data, It does need to be there.
Maybe it's probably okay.
It's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
See, but then there's the data that's not like voices. I always think of voices from the field, like the teachers that we meet every day, boots on the ground, like things we hear that are not reflected in any data point because they're not being assessed.
When did we have to get that?
About 5 minutes ago.
What was the thing that you wanted? for
Just, I think
candidate?
it was the candidate support. We're just making sure and you can add it later too, and I can even add it when we're talking about it too, more in the. And feedback and support they received that was different. It's about the candidate readiness, that was it. Multiple means of measure, demonstrate mastery through additional coursework, approved assessments, and apply UDL principles.
Sorry, where are you at?
Just right there in the first, just after in the work group recommends, right where your cursor's at, right there. We're on way.
Just the last word.
Right there, or you was, where it was. And then like,
Different thing.
yeah, UDL principles.
After,
Or approved assessments and implementing UDL principles. There's something in there about teacher candidates being allowed to not only use multiple measures, but know those UDL principles to help them complete their coursework. The UDL principles are regarding presenting information in multiple ways, providing options for engagement, and then providing options for action and expression. How am I going to demonstrate that I know these things? Okay, and then we'll leave that as a draft, because I know we need that.
you need to explain that.
Yeah, well, UDL is just it's like an overall concept idea that if you design it for everyone, you don't have, there's nothing there because it's already.
Yeah.
done.
So like for my courses, I use UDL, and then when I
About-
get my accommodations letters, I don't have to do very much because it's already done. So it's like, oh, I have my accommodations letter, and I'm like, well, let's meet, and then we meet, and it's like, oh, and I'm
Well,
like,
it's already done.
but yeah, I already
It's already designed.
done.
That help them. Camera. off.